He is the cutest podcast guest.
I would have to agree with that.
Stop taking pictures. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Whatever is True podcast. I am here with my beautiful wife, Bethany.
Hey guys.
And I'm Jake.
And we're laughing because Jake said stop taking pictures of our little guest here. And as he said that, I looked down and he was smiling and I got it on camera.
And it's an awesome shot. So I stand corrected.
You're welcome. All right, so today we are so excited to share with you the birth story of Wilder Coast. He was born exactly 1 week ago. Well, 1 week ago tomorrow, when this actually will launch.
When you're hearing this, he'll be 1 week old.
Yes. And it's really special to be able to tell the story with Jake. For the first several children, I blogged about it, like old school style, wrote out their birth stories. It was really a nice way to be able to share with everyone and also to record the memory. But I have always found myself going back to Jake and asking questions because he remembers a lot more of it.
Yeah, I don't know why. It's not like you're in that much pain or anything.
And so I think it's really unique to have the husband be able to share his side as well. So that's what we're going to do today. Before we jump into the birth story, though, I do want to share about our sponsor, Samaritan Ministries, and a little bit more about our story. So when we delivered our last baby in December of 2022, I had to have a last-minute transfer to a hospital because I had the flu. We were assigned a midwife we had never met before, and Jake noticed an interesting tattoo on her arm. After our daughter was born, safe and soundly, he Googled the tattoo and then let me know. If you see a birth worker with a coat hanger tattoo, it likely means they support abortion. Thanks to Samaritan Ministries, we had the ability to afford for the first time ever a home birth and the opportunity to choose a pro-life midwife. It has been a blessing to have a provider who shares our values on the most important concept, life. If you're looking into midwifery care, I would highly suggest checking out Samaritan Ministries, a pro-life biblical healthcare sharing solution. All of our home birth costs are submitted to Samaritan Ministries, and our eligible needs are shared within their community of believers. We are in the basic program with Samaritan Ministries, which includes the sharing of maternity care up to $5,000. If you're interested in learning more about this amazing ministry, visit SamaritanMinistries.org/wavesandlilacs to learn more. That's SamaritanMinistries.org/wavesandlilacs.
And just as a little bit of a warning for this episode, you guys will probably think it's super cute, but if you hear crying, that is because Wilder is being held by Bethany as we record so that he hopefully doesn't cry, but you might hear him pop in the background. So should we start at the beginning?
A very good place to start.
All right. So it was March 3rd at 5 a.m.
Yes.
I was still sleeping.
Yeah, I should definitely be starting the story. So I woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I woke up to a contraction, which was not like weird. I had been having contractions for weeks, very sporadically. But I had to use the bathroom, of course. And I went to the bathroom and sorry for the guys that are listening. But I had the bloody show, which was not something I don't think I've ever experienced in any of my, birth stories before. And so I knew this was like something very different and weird for my body to be experiencing. And I went back to our bedroom and I woke up Jake, and I had probably had another contraction or two at this point as well. And I said, like, I let him know what was happening.
And you were like, I want to show you, like, you have to come see this. It might not mean anything, or it might be the start of labor.
Right. So I had to Google it, which is so funny because this is our 6th kid. Like, I feel like I should know all of these things, but I looked it up, and of course, you know, Google says what Google says about everything. Like, it might be everything, but it might also be nothing. And I was like, great. So I could be going into labor right now. I could be going into labor 3 days from now. So Jake got out of bed, showing him like toilet papers.
I walk in and I look at the toilet. I'm like, okay, more than likely labor is starting right now. I'm still exhausted. Labor hasn't started. I'm going back to bed. The problem is I didn't tell Bethany that. So I went back to bed to try to get a little bit more sleep. And she came back into the room and found me asleep.
And I was so surprised that he had gone back to bed, because usually whenever I say, like, okay, so my water has always broken first to begin labor. That has been the telltale sign I'm in labor, my water breaks. So this was very different for us. But if you've ever seen Jake before, when I tell him, like, I've posted some of these things online before, when I tell him my water broke, he's like, okay, let's go. Like, we're headed out. We're going to the birth center right now. Obviously, that was different this time because this was a home birth, but I did not think he would go back to sleep.
Okay, but when you tell me, like, this might be something, this might not be anything, and my experience is 5 out of 6 times your water has broken. So that is what I was waiting for, was water to break. And it's a good thing we didn't.
So I find him asleep, and I was like, okay, I'll just try to lay down and see what will happen. I couldn't lay down. The contractions were starting, and even though they weren't hurting terribly, it was very uncomfortable to lay down. And so I stood up, started kind of pacing, and I guess I woke you up again, or I don't even remember.
Yeah, you were a little upset.
And so I wasn't that upset.
I said a little.
And so the contractions were coming, and I got Jacob again or whatever. And so he's like, well, do you want to call the midwife? And I said, I don't know. Like, let's just give it a little bit of time. So I started kind of like pacing the room, and then the contractions started to like intensify a little bit. So I think we called her at 5:50.
Yeah, pretty close to that. And at this point I was like, okay, we're pretty much, we're going. Like, the water didn't break, but contractions were happening. Like, I had to get into game mode, so I did. And we called the midwife center, or the midwife center. We called our midwife, and it went to voicemail.
And the contractions were they were steady. They weren't like terrible to, I could talk, breathe, whatever, but they were consistent, which is something they had not been. So yes, the midwife does not pick up the phone. And we said, okay, well, let's just call Jake's mom to have her ready to come get the kids, because we think that labor is starting.
Right. And she's only 15 minutes away. So I call her, and it goes to voicemail.
And I was like, the 2 people that we need most in the world right now are not answering their phones. Like, what are the odds that this is happening right now? So while Jake is on the phone, like, trying to get in touch, well, Bryn did call back soon after.
Yeah, she called back, which my phone didn't ring when she called back. So I just popped up that there was a missed call, called her back. She communicated.
Said she was coming.
Yeah.
And I left Jake to keep trying to call his mom to come get the kids. So while Jake is trying to call his mom, I started to kind of just like prep myself for labor, because mentally, I mean, it's like now 6:00 in the morning. I'm trying to prepare myself for what the morning is now going to hold, which is not what I thought it was going to hold. And so I went into the kitchen and I turned on like my nice calming twinkle lights, and I put on worship music, and I just started to kind of like sway through and just praise through my contractions. I was very focused on the worship music because I really needed myself to calm down. Like, I could feel the nerves like beginning, because you know, like, what's about to happen. It's not even just like pain. It's your life is about to change. You're going to go through this major moment. And so I just focused all of my anxiety, all of my fear on just praising God and worshiping him, and just felt like such peace. And the house was so peaceful because the kids were all sleeping. Jake came in and he he wrapped his arms around me. He prayed for what we had basically accepted at that point was like definitely labor had started, just not in a way that we had ever experienced before. And I guess at some point after that, you finally got in touch with your mom.
Yeah. So funny story is like she had been telling us how nervous she was that she was going to miss calls and like wasn't sleeping well at night because she was just worried that the call was going to happen. I know. And she even told us afterwards, she's like, well, I've been sleeping better now. But yeah, so what had happened is she had her earbuds in because she was listening to a sermon before she went to bed, and she took her earbuds out but didn't unplug them from her phone. So when I called, it was just ringing in the earbuds, so she didn't hear it. But the vibration woke her up finally, and she was able to come over and grab the kids.
Well, I think she was up already. I think she just finally noticed that her phone was going off.
Oh, I didn't catch that part.
So at this point, Jake goes into like get ready mode, and he starts stripping the bed of like our nice sheets and putting on, what was it? The shower curtain.
Yeah, there was a plastic shower curtain to put underneath.
Old sheets.
Yep.
Like we had like this whole thing down. He called our neighbor to get one of our dogs that would have stressed me out during labor had she been here. And then let's see. So all of that was happening from like 6 to 6:30, 6:40. And that was when the midwife arrived. So she arrived around like 6:40, I think.
Followed quickly by my mother.
Followed quickly by Jake's mom. And they're in the kitchen. I'm in the kitchen having contractions, which were getting strong at this point. Jake was starting to give me counter pressure. I was breathing through them, swaying through them. And when Jake's mom arrived, he said, I'm going to go, wake up the kids, go get the go bag for them and bring them out to the van. And Bryn was just checking on me. I mean, a home birth is so non-invasive. I think that's the beauty of it, and so peaceful. Like she really just listened to the baby's heartbeat to make sure the baby wasn't distressed or anything. But she told me later that I was in transition at that point, which really shocked me because the contractions were not as bad as I would have thought. And I think it's because my water hadn't broken. Everyone has always said contractions intensify and they get so much harder when you have your water broken. But that's all I had literally ever known. I didn't know what contractions were like in labor without that. And so I will say that was one of the pros of not having my water break, was it was much more mild. And so as Jake is running around the house to wake up the kids, to tell them the good news.
Well, hang on. First, we were like trying to figure out like, oh, should we let the kids sleep a little bit more? Should we like have breakfast, like have them eat breakfast before they leave?
Okay, breakfast.
Hang on. And then Bryn looks at you and goes, I will be surprised if you're not at 7 right now. And I was like, all right, the kids are going right now. So I went up, I woke up.
You were tired.
Yeah. I woke up Hadley and Juniper first, and they were so excited, and they came downstairs. And then I went in to get Emmett and the little girls, and I said, hey, Emmett, mommy's in labor. She's about to have the baby. And he shoots up like a shot, and he just goes, what? You're not kidding, right? You can't be kidding, Dad. She's in labor. I was like, yep, she's about to have the baby. Are you serious? You can't kid around.
It was so cute. So the kids were so excited, and they're so sleepy. Rosie, Jake tried to wake her up.
She went back to bed.
I mean,
she's my daughter.
And we are not an early rising house. Like our family wakes up slowly from like 7:30 to 8 probably in the morning. So this was 7:00 in the morning that all of this was happening. And they're all coming out and saying hi to me. And my midwife and I were talking later, and she said, I'm pretty sure your body basically like paused during transition just to be able like to say goodbye, but also like my body just knew it wasn't time to progress right now. And so it kind of paused, and I was able to like talk to the kids, say goodbye to them. I was still having contractions, and Bryn had to help me through some of them because Jake was getting all of the kids out the door. But it was just kind of such a funny situation to be dealing with the kids at this point and not realizing that like I had actually, gotten to this point of labor, and like the pushing phase would have been coming up relatively soon. So Jake's mom leaves with the kids. It's just me, Jake, and the midwife. The dog is gone. The house was so calm, so peaceful. We had like all of our Christmas lights still decked out in the rafters. We still do. And
happy birthday balloon left up from
yes. And all I really remember is the contractions. Just they started coming again. I remember holding on to Jake, swaying, and so there were two things that were happening during this labor that I haven't mentioned yet, and they were really annoying little things. I felt like I had to pee every 5 seconds. I mean, I was in and out of the bathroom. Like to me, it felt like it was like every 5 to 10 minutes, if that. And it wasn't that I was peeing a ton. I was peeing a little bit, but it was how he was situated. It was so uncomfortable. And so it was like I'd go through a contraction and then I'd have to pee. And then on top of that, I could not sit down and I could not lay down because, again, of how he was situated inside me. I would sit and I would be so uncomfortable, and I had to stand the entire time. So I was standing from 5 o'clock in the morning until close to when he was born, actually. And I started getting to like the point where I knew, we would be pushing soon, but I couldn't find a place that I felt sturdy enough and with enough space to be able to push him out. And so, again, one of those conversations you have post-birth, Jake was having actually with our midwife.
Yeah, so I've talked about this before, but like when Bethany gets ready to deliver, she's always delivered, except for the boys, in the same position. And that's like if someone got injured on a football field, everyone takes a knee. And that's always been the way Bethany has delivered, well, all the girls. So, and I could see her body wanting to get into that position, but on the floor, we had these things called Chuck's pads, which are plastic on one side and absorbent on the other side. And as she's trying to get comfortable in her very small cottage rental, that our bed takes up most of the room, but as she was trying to get into that position, the Chuck's pads were slipping under her feet. So she was just kind of like constantly like catching herself and readjusting and like balancing. She wasn't able to just kind of like settle and relax in that position.
Yeah, so it was a little hard for me, and I could feel my body tensing. So one of the major ways to deal with an unmedicated birth is to let your body relax and be as loose, as flowy as possible. And so that's what I focus on. Like I'm actually very quiet during labor. I just breathe and focus. And that's what I had been doing this whole labor, but I could feel my body tensing because I couldn't figure out a way to position myself in, again, like this tiny bedroom.
That's one of the things that you said to me, like at the very beginning, before our midwife was even here. She was just like, all right, remind me to stay loose. Just remind me to stay loose. People have pain-free births all the time. I can just stay loose and I'll be fine.
It definitely wasn't pain-free, but it really was a very manageable birth or labor up until pushing. Pushing is just like the part that sets me off. So trying to like find a position, and as we're working through these contractions, I start getting these moments of complete rest. I have zero pain. I was on my knees, leaning over a bed on pillows and just laying my head down because my legs were so tired from standing since 5:00 in the morning. And so my legs are like kind of giving way.
And then trying to balance on those chucks pads.
Right. But I also knew like I had to be in a certain position for Jake to be able to give me counter pressure and let baby come out. And so I had all these like things going on in my mind of what do I do? And so thankfully I ended up with like very long periods of rest. I don't know. I mean, I'm not a really good person to ask as far as time goes, but I would say they were like 10 minutes long or something. And so thankfully, when the kids left at 7, and to give you the timeline, Wilder was born at 9:07 a.m. So 2 hours after they left. And again, I had been in transition at 7:00. So we're not really sure what happened because I was never checked at any point during labor to see how many centimeters I was. We were purely guessing based off of intensity of contractions, how close they were together, and how long they were going. So my midwife ends up saying to me, I think that you've been leaning over a lot. And I think that if you stand up and lean against Jake, like my back against Jake, you might be able to get the baby to position better to be able to get him to descend. And as soon as I stood up against Jake, I mean, I felt the difference and there was incredible pain to the point where I was like, I can't stand here and do this. I have to go back to like my comfort zone. And it was kind of just a lot of that, like back and forth for like 2 hours between contractions, resting, and then working to get him into the proper position. Eventually, we ended up completely on the floor. And
yeah, Bethany was just, her legs were so tired. Her was shaking and just, you could tell that she was exhausted and like she just wasn't ready to push. And like you were concerned that there wasn't enough room, like the way you were situated for Wilder to be born. So what we decided was that I would just sit on the floor and just hold Bethany. Well, your upper half.
Yeah.
Just hold her in my lap. And that way I was still able to give you counter pressure and you were able to just go dead weight and just be on me so that your body could just relax and you could just focus on pushing.
So then I remember thinking, well, now I'm laying down, which is everything I've always been taught not to do. Like we talk about birthing at a hospital and how they encourage you to lay on your back and to push the baby out. But if you really look at the science of it and to open up the pelvis, like you want to be squatting or something like that to...
Or on all fours.
Or on all fours to be helping the baby out. And so it felt very backwards for me to be choosing this position that I had like always been taught. Like this is not the way to do it.
Yeah. You were on your side though.
I was?
Yeah. You were more on your side. You weren't flat on your back.
Okay. Which I know like side position works. And I remember just saying to the midwife, like, are you sure? Like, am I going to be okay to get the baby out with this position? And she was so encouraging. She was so calm, so peaceful. I mean, there was never anything wrong at all during the birth. And she said, like, you're fine how you are, like the baby's going to come out. And so I just laid there.
You asked if you needed more gravity.
Yeah. I was concerned about the gravity factor. And how long from like me laying on you to him being born do you think took place?
Under 15 minutes.
Under 15 minutes. Okay. Yeah. So my body finally just got into a position that it needed to be in to birth him. But
see, I think it was your body was finally able to relax.
Yeah.
Because you were so tense trying to keep your balance and everything that, and you were so tired from walking around for 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was just being able to fully relax and just focus on where you needed to have your body work.
So again, had been pretty much quiet up until this part. There had been a couple moments where I could feel like the pressure to push had started to come. And I had let out some like low groans, which would bring the midwife back into the room to check on us. So as I'm laying there on the floor, I was still thinking my water still hasn't broken. Like what's going on here? When is my water going to break? Like surely when my water breaks, like that'll set everything in motion. But my water still hadn't broken, and my body was beginning to bear down, and I could feel him descending and ready to come out.
See, in the back of my mind, I was like, one of the times that she was in the bathroom, like it broke without her realizing, and like it had happened. Like that's where my mind was. I was like, this is progressing clearly. Like she's about to start pushing. The water had to have broken. Nope.
So I start pushing, and I mean, really, like my whole side of the story is I was just pushing. The pushing for me, the ring of fire is the worst part for me. Contractions are manageable. I can get there, but pushing, get me out of this phase as fast as possible. I am yelling. I started actually like high pitched screaming at one point, and Jake, he swears he said to me,
yeah, I was like, deep, go deep. And she did. She, as soon as I said it, she
I don't even remember him saying that.
Low groans.
And I just low groaned him out, but you can share what you saw on your end.
So cool, because the way we were situated, you know, I was holding Bethany, and I was able to just look to my left, and I was able to see everything that midwife was doing, and I looked down because the midwife had asked if you wanted to feel his head to know that you were progressing and everything. And she had told us too, like, your water hasn't broken yet. It is a really tough water sac. And when it pops, it might surprise you. So I'm looking and like, okay, so my baby's about to be born. Water, I guess, hadn't broken. Like it clicked in my mind that no, you know, she knows what she's talking about. So I look down as Bethany's pushing, and I start to see the top of his head coming out. And then all of a sudden it was just like a water balloon got popped, and like the midwife had a Chuck's pad up as like a dam for any splash.
A little barrier.
Splash, yeah. And like I saw like the contraction started, I saw the head, I saw the water break, and then he was out. Like normally it's Bethany, the baby's head is birthed, and then you have to wait for the next contraction to get the rest of the shoulders and the body out. Wilder just came out at once. Like water broke, saw the head, saw the shoulders, saw his butt, he was out.
But you saw his head still in the water sac.
Yeah. I wasn't able to I didn't know, like I wasn't able to focus on it and be like, oh, that's the sac, because it was like I saw the top of the head and then it broke.
Yeah. And the midwife actually had to take the amniotic sac off of his face so that he could breathe right away.
Yeah, I saw her doing that. Like as he was coming out, she was like wiping his face off, and he started crying. Like he wasn't even all the way out and he was crying.
And as far as being prepared for the water sac or the amniotic sac to break, I had no idea. Like everything was just painful in that moment. So there was nothing, like, I appreciated her warning me in advance, but I had absolutely no idea. It was completely oblivious.
So Wilder slides out, and Bethany and I had talked about it, and Bethany told me, I want you to announce whether it's a boy or a girl.
Because I got to announce Rosie was a girl, and then all of the other ones were announced by a midwife or a nurse. And so I thought, I really want Jake to be able to do it. And it was like the perfect, like nobody was like fighting over it or anything like that. We're like, or like you're trying to inform people last minute, like, hey, don't announce the gender, like leave it to the dad.
Yeah. So, you know, he came out, and like my eyes are just filled with tears. And I remember the thought just popped into my head, like, Bethany wants me to tell her if it's a boy or a girl. So I'm like, okay, all right, got to clear my eyes, blinking quickly. I look over, and I see the midwife's hands, fingers, umbilical cord, his leg, and a little penis. And then it was gone. And then I was like, okay, it's a boy. And I tell Bethany, she's like, it's a boy? Are you sure? I'm like, I'm 95% positive. And I looked again. I was like, yes, it is definitely a boy. And all Bethany was saying is, I did it. I'm done.
I am so emotional post-birth, like all of the adrenaline, all of the anticipation, everything, and like the height of the pain. And then like you're at the top of the roller coaster of pain, and then you're just like whoof, all the way down in the matter of a second. And I mean, it takes me a long time to like really come back to, and I just kept exclaiming like, I'm done. And like Bryn's holding Wilder for me to take him. And like, I didn't even like my hand, if we have a video of it, but like my hand was like draped back behind me and the other hand was holding on to Jake. And it took me a while to like get to where I needed to be to grab him from her. And then it was just such a beautiful emotional moment, and meeting him, 100% realizing he was a boy. And it was just so special on our bedroom floor, just laying there on our bedroom floor. Jake was probably like the size of the gap between our bed and our wall where he was delivered.
It was great though, because I was just stuck there. I wasn't moving. You weren't moving. It worked. Yeah, it was great. And one of the crazy parts too about all this was like, usually you would birth the baby, we have the baby, and then they would give you Pitocin or something to cause a contraction to birth the placenta. Since he was, what's it called? In call?
So he was a partial in-call birth. I mean, he didn't come out fully in the sac, but our midwife said his head did emerge in the sac. So that would technically be a partial in-call birth.
Right. But like, so everything was right there. Like the placenta came out, everything was like right away. So it was really crazy to see the differences.
Yeah. Like as soon as Wilder came out, I mean, minutes later, the placenta was birthed. And I remember being so shocked, like, what do you mean it already came out? And
yeah,
so
she was just like,
really
and there's
fast.
the placenta. I was like, wait, what? Like normally it's like, okay, we got to hold the baby, like while Bethany pushes the placenta out,
right.
and it was nothing like that.
Yeah, everything just was so smooth, so beautiful. And after that, I was able to get in bed, hold him, nurse him. She was able to check me. There was no tearing, praise God. And then a little while later, we weighed him. And I really just thought our biggest baby was 8 pounds, 11 ounces. And I was surprised at that. I just wasn't expecting it. But what I really was not expecting was Wilder at 9 pounds, 4 ounces.
22 inches long.
22 inches long. I was like, how did I fit this inside of me? It was crazy. But I mean, he was a couple days past his due date. So was Emmett, but Emmett was almost a pound smaller than he was. So praise God. And, you know, one of the things that I had really had to deal with mentally for myself was just that God would provide strong lungs for him and we would not have any breathing issues. And so our last 2 children, Story had to be brought to the NICU for breathing issues. Her oxygen dropped hours after she was born. And then Rosie, who was right before her, was almost brought down to the hospital from the midwife center due to breathing issues as well. And so I had talked extensively about my fears and concerns with our current midwife, our old midwives, one of our friends who was a doula, and I had just expressed my concerns, and they had all assured me that it would be okay, that a midwife comes prepared with everything that she needs. I mean, Bryn, our midwife, told us everything that she had. She had full confidence that should any breathing issues appear, like she came with the oxygen pulse and whatever else. It's basically like your midwife center in a bag. And we didn't need any of that. He had perfect lungs from the beginning. His APGAR score was 9 out of 10. I mean, it was perfect. And it was so, there's a song on my playlist, my birth playlist, that talks about the the Bible verse, joy comes in the morning. And it just really felt like God's promise of joy coming in the morning as he was born in the morning after like weeks of just, I wasn't in a depression or anything, but I was really struggling mentally. I physically felt awful for weeks. I couldn't do a whole lot around the house. I was so tired. I was uncomfortable. I was in pain. I would have days where I was just mentally struggling, and then to have a birth or a pregnancy go beyond my due date, which hadn't happened in 10 years, just felt like, that final thing. And the morning he was born, we had so much sunshine and sunlight pouring through our house, and the day was just absolute peace. My in-laws kept the kids for the rest of the day, which was so nice. And it allowed Jake and I to just rest with the baby and get to know him and tell everyone that he was here. And I just think back to like, wow, what a perfect day. And weeks before he was born, I remember, having, I don't know if it was one of the particularly hard days or what, but I remember looking outside and all of a sudden just the light was just pouring through the window. And I just really like felt God's presence and just him saying, I am with you. And to have that same sunlight and sunshine coming through, and so many answered prayers that day with his birth, it like I will never be able to put into words like how thankful I am for it, and just what a testimony it is to God's goodness that joy does come in the morning.
Yeah, that is Psalms chapter 30, verse 5. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning.
Oh, I love it so much. So much. Oh, I know what I wanted to add to this. So it's always fun to talk birth stories after the fact and like what everybody was thinking and experiencing. But the midwife said she's pretty sure that the amniotic sac, since it was so strong, that was why it was so hard for him to descend. And so I would have a contraction and I would get him down, but then the amniotic sac would work as a spring and would push him back up.
Yeah, so it'd be like taking a foam ball and squeezing it during the contraction, and then once the contraction was done, you let it go and it just springs back to its original shape. So she was saying like his head was engaging during the contractions, and then afterwards he wouldn't be. So we think that if her water had broken, it would have been like a sub 2 hour delivery.
And we'll never know. It's kind of fun to theorize and think through all of these things. But
the crazy thing though is like you just have to be special, because for the first 5, her water broke every single time, which is 1 in 10 that happens.
10%.
Yeah. So then she goes to going into labor without her water breaking and becomes 1 in 70,000 or something like that for in the call birth.
Okay. So like a full in call birth, I think is 80,000 births. I don't know what that number is a year or what. So we're the partial in call, which I don't know the numbers for that. I don't know what the numbers is
on that one either, but it's just,
it was just so extreme differences.
Yeah. And it just makes it really special and enjoyable.
I said all of our kids just can't be normal. So there you have it. There is the birth story of Wilder Coast. I hope that it is encouraging to any women out there who are thinking about having a home birth. It was hands down my favorite birthing experience for location. I think my easiest birth was Rosalie because she was 2 hours. We were in and out. She was done. But this birth was so peaceful, and being, even though like this home hasn't even been our home for very long and it's not even our forever home or anything, it felt like home, which I'm so thankful for. And just to have worship music playing, to have literally like no IVs or antibiotics or anything like that. There was no nurses, midwives trying to figure out anything. Really, all our midwife did was just check his heartbeat which was steady and perfect the entire time, even like till just before pushing. And I just felt like it was how birth was intended to be.
Yeah.
And I would 100% have a home birth again if we were to ever have another child.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it too, because the Midwife Center in Pittsburgh did a really good job of making the rooms homey and comfortable, but it's still medical. Like there's still that feel of it. You know, it's not your home. And this was just amazing.
Well, and I've always talked very positively about the Midwife Center. I've loved my births there. But now having a home birth, and like you're saying, like you can compare the two, and there's nothing like being at home. I mean, we didn't have to take a fresh baby into the car, out into the cold, and drive it several miles home or anything. Like we just stayed in bed all day. And we had access to our kitchen with our food. So I had prepped some postpartum food that Jake was able to go out into the kitchen and make. He made us all scrambled eggs, and I had frozen sourdough muffins like a couple weeks prior. And so the three of us just sat in the bedroom eating scrambled eggs and sourdough muffins right after he was born. It's just so special and unique in like a really normal way.
Yeah. So that is the birth story of Wilder Coast. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. We enjoyed telling you about it, and we'll see you on the next one.
See you guys.